So the harsh
Go ahead.
reality is my trip from Cape Town to Algeria took me 24 hours. I had to literally exit Africa and enter back into Africa, which makes no sense, right?
All right, so everyone, welcome to another episode of TakaTalks. Assalamu alaikum. We have with us a very special guest. Her name is Lavina Ramkissoon. And I actually met Lavina in Algeria. I know Lavina is from South Africa. And I'm really glad to have her back on. I'm really glad to see her again. It's been, I would say, almost a year since we met. So it's amazing to have you. Let me tell you a little bit about Lavina before I let her introduce herself. Lavina is making significant contributions to the world of technology, particularly in AI, blockchain, and emerging tech. She has received numerous accolades and awards for her leadership, including recognition as one of the top 10 women advancing AI and as part of the top 100 women in AI ethics. She is a futurist and a leader who advocates for the unification of the African tech space. Her expertise spans psychology, technology, and economics, which she applies to various areas, including AI and blockchain. As a chairperson, director, and founder, she's committed to unlocking the potential of the African tech arena. She's known for humanizing technology and serving as a growth enabler for tech talent worldwide, making her an inspirational figure. Definitely. And I just discovered she is the mother of twins, which is another level of motherhood, in case anyone is wondering. So Lavina, thank you for being with us today. I know you're going to travel today as well, so it's much appreciated. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, awesome. So thanks again so much for the kind intro and the kind words. Absolutely pleasure seeing you in Morad again. It's been almost a year, about 9 months, I think, and counting. So just a little bit about me. I'm known as the AI mom who speaks Africa, and that's been pretty much a title that's been attached to me for quite a while, probably around a good 5-6 years or so. So my work kind of spans across different streams, as you can tell. One is in the startup and investment space. The other is on the research side, and the other one is around tech policies itself across the continent. And then just for fun, because we have so much of time, and if life wasn't interesting enough, we decided to add some startups to the mix.
That's very cool. Tell us a little bit about how you got into, or you ended up where you are today. How did you become the AI mom?
Oh, wow. Okay. That's quite a journey. So my passion was always around the human mind. That's where I've always had a fascination. And I had gotten a choice to have a bursary to actually study the human mind or to take out a student loan and study computer science, this new passionate thing, a good 25 years ago. No guess as to which direction I ended up choosing. Computer science definitely started off as an amazing journey for me. However, 10 years later, I actually did round my circle in terms of completion of psychology, with a specialization in child psychology as well. And that's been pretty much my journey from a tech perspective itself. I loved literally all the different aspects of it, didn't want to specialize, and became a generalist more than anything else in the era of specialization.
So the potential for technology, obviously, to change things and to make an impact is, I think it's well known around the world. Even in ways, even when it comes to things we don't want to change or that have changed for the worse, technology has usually been the culprit. So when it comes to AI and the potential for Africa, what do you see as the greatest, what is the most exciting, what is the thing on your radar today that AI can change and can make an impact in Africa?
Yeah, I think it's about giving tangibility back to the every single citizen, and that becomes really key. So, for example, having whether it's a robo-visor or having some form of an AI that helps you to navigate your bank accounts to optimize savings, something that is there that allows you to track investments and wealth management and, pensions as an example. Those become like really key things in terms of, every penny counts. And we've been taught that, and we understand the sort of ramifications of that. So I think, in terms of those type of things, absolutely. I would even go a little bit further and say, for me, the beauty really lies in the merger of technologies like AI and blockchain, as an example, or AI and quantum. That's where things get really super interesting, and where I think every digital citizen can actually benefit. We know that the whole technological divide is something that is really real, and particularly very true within the context of Africa. So, from that perspective, it is something that we need to consciously keep in our minds more so than everyone else, together with the fact that we're the youngest continent. So, having those two in mind, and, knowing that we are going to be contributing quite significantly to the globe, equally so, we got to make sure that we have the right kind of pillars and frameworks in place so that the digital divide actually gets minimized. So what do we mean by that? We mean, for example, mobile sort of access becomes something that is easily achievable, affordable, and accessible to every single person within the continent. For example, I know that there's a really cool one from Kenya at the moment, where they have mandated all the schools to actually have 100% internet connectivity, which means that they're actually gearing themselves up from an educational perspective to allow kids to engage in that digitization process, right? So little small things like that, or even, having continuous power as an example. These become fundamental blocks that we need to put into place and get ticked off so that the digital divide actually becomes super narrow.
Yeah, so this is interesting because we've we on our journey, we're always talking about the blockchain, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and we believe obviously that's the best thing since sliced bread. When we go to speak to people in Africa, there's first of all very high adoption in Africa to begin with. However, some people will push back and they will be like, yeah, but there's not even internet in some places, no electricity in some places. How can you expect digital money to take the role of money at all when this is the case? And how do you respond to that?
Yeah, again, find balance, right? As much as there's problems, there's opportunities, and that's pretty much the stance. So whether we're talking about things like, allowing for DeFi functionalities to happen, or CeFi functionalities, or Web3, or metaverse, or, crypto, all of that kind of has showcased they all have a place for it. So to give you an example, within the startup ecosystem, we've seen a company that has gone ahead and created a USSD code, which is a very simplified version, of engaging with a mobile operator, and allowing you to have functionalities like app-like, and without the internet, right? So that's basically something that a company has gone ahead in the context of Africa and created access for people to have crypto wallets, as an example, via USSD. So those things are sort of happening, and, accessibility is coming in many different shapes and forms across. So I think, again, it's that balancing phase of how do we actually get the right kind of things across the line that's actually going to really support that ecosystem at large.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So we have to develop multiple things in parallel. Yeah, Murad?
I'm going to be asking you some kind of tricky question, I would say. First of all, when you fly from Cape Town to Algiers the last time, how long was the trip, and was it a direct flight? And since you're kind of an expert in Africa, I am starting to get really tired of it. To see Africa as a continent, to be one of the smallest continents on the map in the world, when actually, when I even Google, I see that from Dakar to Mogadishu is like almost like 10,000 kilometers. And when I take Paris to the end of Russia, is 7,000 kilometers. But when you see the map, it looks like Africa is like a small continent that can fit into France even. Is that true? Is that like what's happening here? And why do we have Africa so misrepresented? And then I will go to other question definitely. But
Okay,
these
I
are
love the
like, since you
questioning.
travel a lot, I want to know if it's really like it.
Yeah. So the harsh
Go
reality
ahead.
is my trip from Cape Town to Algeria took me 24 hours. I had to literally exit Africa and enter back into Africa, which makes no sense, right? From a carbon emission perspective, saving our planet, or even just from time optimization, right? Makes yeah. So that happens a lot. So the airspace within the continent hasn't really opened up as much as we, the residences of the continent would like to see, right? Whether we're traveling to Algeria or to any other part, travel is getting a little bit crazy. We now have seen, funny enough, you mentioned Algeria. We've seen Algeria opening up a direct flight to South Africa. I think that just got announced about 2 to 3 weeks ago. So that's really interesting. But yeah, I mean, we need a lot more of that to happen within a shorter space of time. Visas are a huge issue. Multi-currencies are a huge issue. Languages are a huge issue. So, those things are still very much there when one has to travel. You go from, the likes of Southern Africa into East Africa, and they're completely different from a finance perspective, right? In Southern Africa, everybody utilizes their mobile phones and they just tap, 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 and off you go, right? Whereas, East Africa, everything is cash and, they don't accept much cards at all, not even in your retail stores. So the sort of disparities that you see when you travel across the continent is really, really rife. And, it becomes really key again in terms of those opportunities that get highlighted, right? In terms of the question you asked from a widespread perspective, I share it. I share the frustration in terms of Africa just being seen as something that is the underdog for a very long time. We've been placed into a particular bracket societally. And, we've allowed ourselves to also function within those parameters for a really long time. So it's had like a knock-on effect, both from a personal perspective, a cultural, a socio, and even an economic perspective, right? And I think now we're starting to see a lot more youth having a larger voice in the space. And ever since then, it's become one where things are slightly starting to shift. We're seeing, for example, younger ministers being appointed that are more tech savvy, that want more digitization, that are talking to the actual needs of the continent, right? So that is kind of happening. I think it's really funny, the whole sort of narrative you depict around, Paris to Russia, is 7,000, and just in Africa itself, it's over 10,000, and that's the reality, right? I mean, it's a large continent. We're sitting with quite a large population. We're sitting with a lot of diversity within it, and we're sitting with a lot of people that are just hungry to actually solve their day-to-day problems. It may just seem their day-to-day problems, but it's actually, amplified across. So if it's one farmer that's having a problem, trust me, it's not just one. There's probably a likelihood of at least, 1,000, if not 10,000 farmers that feel exactly the same. I think the narrative is changing. The whole tech colonization sort of aspect is one that is being seriously taken by people like ourselves in the continent. And, those are things we want to change. And I think the most recent BRICS summit kind of articulates to that in terms of some aspects around it. The sort of concept has always been Africa was taught never to function as a continent, as one solidarity. And, therein lies a lot in itself.
Just to follow on that question, the demographic actually, it's really for Africa. The average age is like 18 years old. I mean, in comparison to the Europeans, it's like 42 years old. So it's already like, it's really like, even if Africans do nothing, they win the battle here, in terms of age, numbers, and everything. But now you have the young Africans, as you mentioned, who are leapfrogging everything. So do you see, based on your travel and what's happening, because you go in and out also in different countries in the world and go back to Africa, do you see that the adoption of technology, and in particular the payment space, and when we look at M-Pesa, for example, that people want to downplay a little bit in the West, but M-Pesa act like literally like a bank. And Africans, they leapfrog. They went from no bank to a mobile bank that we should take as an example to not only Africa, but to the world. Can you please elaborate on that? Because you were just on, and, let me know if those numbers are, really effective, it's really happening in terms of...
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've always advocated for is that we are a young continent. Yeah, it is an average of 18 years old, if not 18.8, but, it doesn't really count. So, again, it's the concept of how do we actually deliver products that actually talk to the youth. So most of the things that actually exist across the continent, again, don't actually speak to the majority, which is a frustration for myself, right? Because again, as much as you can travel and you can see the different narratives sort of popping up, you also need to start seeing those things addressed. So what we've started seeing of late are things like, a bank that has specifically come about for the youth, right? We've now gone ahead and seen, specialized banking that has started to address the larger populations, right? Whether it's Islamic banking, or whether it's a woman bank, or whether it's the youth bank, or whether it's just, specifically driven around kids as an example. So those things have become largely sort of, highlighted. And I think over the next period of like 3 years, we're going to see a much larger ramp up of that. Even there's talks around things like ethical banking itself. I really love the example that you give around the M-Pesa story, right? And that's literally something that is truly an African-owned story that has literally changed how people can transfer money across the globe, right? And it is something that has set the pace to unlock a lot more innovations like DeFi, as an example, to then exist, right? So, we need a lot of these building blocks to be in place, to allow for a lot more adoptions to happen, or even to allow for innovations to happen. So, M-Pesa's story is one that is unlocking, or actually not even unlocking, but it's almost bridging the whole traditional banked financing world to the whole telco world. And, it's allowing for those two spaces to kind of start really being combined. And what we're starting to see now is, since their launch and since their adoption, we've now started seeing that the banks and telcos are actually starting to compete with each other. I mean, who would have ever heard of, real-time payments being such a big thing, or real-time settlement being such a big thing, right? The payment space within Africa is huge. Most of the fintechs to date that have gotten funded particularly, focus within the payment space itself, whether it's payments, remittance, crypto. That's the sort of foundation of where the large investments have gone into. But now we're starting to see, that has unlocked a lot more competition between banks themselves. So I think it was in 2030, it's predicted that banks will just become IT-led companies, more so than just being banks themselves. That was something that was done by, I think, the World Bank itself. And, together with that, we're also by 2030 going to start seeing a large adoption rate. I think it's like 88% in real-time payments. That's huge, right? And together with that, you're going to see at least 10% of all payments being done across the blockchain. So, we have all of these interesting narratives that are coming together very closely, and it's allowing for different sectors within an industry to start merging and to bring about like different levels of competition and different levels of how they actually survive in the space, right? So I think it's actually just phenomenal. And a lot more needs to be sung about it. And I promise you, there's a lot more stories that exist on the continent, like the likes of an M-Pesa, that just have not been highlighted enough, or that just don't get highlighted. As we said, it's a large continent, and it's easy to kind of just, get swallowed up or not be heard amongst the billions of, or 500 million of voices that exist. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we see happening a lot across the continent.
I would say, I would add on that, not being heard. I wish it was the case to not being heard only. It's to be let alone. The issue we have with Africa is that the neo-colonialism have never stopped, regardless to whom you're talking about. And it's a very shame that in the world today, if any country in Southeast Asia would face whatever Mali, Niger is facing with the French, I'm French myself, so I'm freely speaking against the French, you will be a march between Washington to the ocean, all the way to Europe to stop this injustice that's happening in any country. When it comes to Africa, I don't even see a headline on what's happening with the people trying to get away from I would say, this money that is not a money, the franc CFA, that is enslaving an entire East Africa, and that's why you have no hope, because they are tied up and to the peg. They are pegged to the euro. Imagine in Africa being pegged to the euro, so you have no way to produce anything inland because you will be too expensive to export. Nobody wants to use euro, only European. And then the African, they not only are pegged, the East African nation are pegged to the euro, and the money that they have been given is useless. I have a friend that came one time to France with a suitcase of franc CFA, and he wanted to use this money in Galerie Lafayette, whatever shop, Carrefour, and they told him that's not money. He could not change it at the exchange. He could not do anything. So that was kind of ridiculous. And so again, there was a parenthesis. I think I wish we could be free from not being disturbed by other nation coming to Africa and just misusing our resources.
On the subject of money, which is something that's obviously important to us and close to our hearts, tell us a little bit about the different monetary regimes, so to speak. Like, how does money get used in different parts in Africa? I'll tell you my own personal story. I think the first time I was in Algeria, because obviously I went to visit Murad's family. This was 2000 and, well, a long time ago, 2005 approximately. And I come from Singapore, which is, you can say, a financial center in Southeast Asia and in much of Asia. So we have banks and we have all kinds of financial instruments. Everything is very well done and easily accessible. And I lived in the United States at the time, so I'm also very exposed to just, easy financial tools. I go to Algeria, and the first thing that we do is Murad wakes me up and like, we have to go, and we go to the market and we enter the shoe shop. And I'm like, why are we here? You're going to buy some shoes for the baby or something? And he's like, oh, no, we need to change money. He brings his euros, he goes to the shoe shop, he gives to the shoe shop, attendant, and he gets Algerian dinars instead. And I was like, what is this? How do you go exchange currency in a shoe shop? What about the banks? And I learned that, first of all, you'll have to, stand in line forever. You'll get an exchange rate which is roughly half of what the black market rate is. And that's just how it's done in Algeria. And we fast forward to my last trip, which was in 2022. It's still the same. So give us a little bit of insight for people who, most people outside of Africa don't get to go to Africa. Tell us a little bit about how this works, how money is used.
Yeah, so there definitely is that, and that definitely still continues to date in different parts of Africa. And again, it just depends on the maturity level of the countries. And maturity levels is a combination of things. It's culture, it's economics, it's politics, that kind of determine how advanced they've become, or, how much more they've adopted into the different types of payments that are out there. So we kind of see all of it happening, from the likes of, sitting in a rural store, and exchanging, your funds. That's something that happens all the way through to, payments that are tap and go, all the way to crypto payments, where people are actually living completely on crypto, and everything they do, everything they purchase is on that. So, and then we have the other extremity, which is, mobile wallets, and, everyone kind of just living off that and seeing no need to actually be banked itself. So, again, it's not an easy answer for me, because we have so many different inroads, and we have so many different ways of addressing different problems, and they all kind of came about particular to that country itself, right? So there is no unfortunate right nor wrong, but we do know that there are certain things that we need to evolve away from, right? Certain things that may have been there in place, but now it's time for us to really rethink it, right? So to give you an example, I mean, I just traveled this year, probably about 2 months ago, to Ghana, and, landed there, did the whole e-visa stuff online way beforehand, got into the country, thought it was all fine. No, had to stand in line, had to re-get an entire e-visa issued, go through the whole biometrics process, and then get to the line and then be told that, you need to pay, but you need to pay with cash. And I'm like, okay, get to an ATM and then realize that the amount that, within a South Africa environment, as example, our minimum is not that high, right? So realized very quickly that I wasn't going to have enough to actually then pay, the full amount. So here's me sitting on the floor in the Ghanaian airport, calling up a friend and saying, can you please come over, bring some, of your cedis, and, I'll sort you out when we're out on the other side. And just did a mobile transfer, into their wallets. So it was like crazy, right? But, that's the kind of realities that we live with just one person, right? Having to experience something like that and then take your experience. So, again, I think there's a very streamlined way, or a very smart way, that we could actually go about approaching the whole like financial sort of problem, or the flow of finances across the continent, in a very much more simplistic manner. So there's something that we got taught like absolutely at the beginning of computer science, which is just keep it simple. And that still stays true to date, because, as much as we like to bring in all the cool, sexy kind of stuff, and, because tech can do all of these latest things, and we want the buzzwords, and we want to say we're relevant. But it really starts with, just foundational basic simplicities. And that could be just optimization of a process internally, or it could just mean, implementing something that is super centralized for everyone's adoption, that gets tracked no matter where you are. and it becomes a really simplified story or a narrative that Africa can then go and say, yes, listen, we're actually starting to function as a continent. So for me, it's besides the mindset, I think the other aspect and the other avenue that we can actually potentially put together is the infrastructural layers, between ourselves and actually start functioning in that way. So yeah, not the most easiest of solutions. Unfortunately, a very varied exposure of them.
Yeah. So let's look at crypto now, because I think crypto is one of those solutions. I don't want to say the solution, but it's likely one of those solutions that will ease the rails between even within the country, but as well as between countries. What is the sentiment on the ground right now vis-a-vis crypto from the general population and then from the regulators?
Yeah, and I think that's an awesome distinction that you make because we need to. So, from a user perspective, absolutely, they see the value. We saw, I think, a 2,800 percentage hike during the period of the pandemic in terms of adoption for crypto itself. We've seen, other parts of the continent kind of awaken to the fact of, there's this new thing, they've started to embrace it. So one is literacy has gone up in terms of that. Awareness has gone up, education has gone up, and adoption has gone up as a knock-on effect, right? From a regulatory standpoint, we've obviously seen a lot start to happen in that space. Africa is one where, again, we have different regulators treating it differently. Some are very proactive, some are very cautious, and others are, well, I'll think about it in 10 years kind of thing.
So we touch a little bit on the, a startup coming in Africa, launching, I would say interest-based lending platform, buy now, pay later, or collaborating without any regulator with telcos to loan money to people. The reality of the matter is that most of those startups, and I'm going to be very honest with you, Laniva, they are coming from the West to milk the African nation. Most of the time you see an MIT guy graduate and he has a background, African background, or sometimes he has no African background. So sometimes they like to say, oh, this guy is like, so usually they take literally a dude fresh from Harvard coming with a fintech solution for the African people. And it's not like a homegrown guy who understand and feel the Africans. They come, milk, and actually is like worse than interest is usury. It's like the mafia comes and says, I want 50% of whatever I loan you. And that's what's happening. And they come from the West, all well educated from big university, well funded by VC, and milk the African. That's my own opinion that I have and I've seen. Or they will make sure they get an African broom and educated from the West. That's the new technique now. And they come in and they make it as an African startup. When they are not African startup, born and raised and there and have been doing things. That's thing that I've seen. I've seen it often and often. You don't need to trust me for that. Just open TechCrunch and see the founding team. The guy is in Senegal and is whiter than me and is like launching a tech solution, fintech, doesn't even understand the culture, doesn't even understand. And the worst, to go on, the worst is that Africa is 60% Muslim, 60, with the latest stat, and growing, by the way. You can just look at map and everything. Who are those people building for? They alienate with the riba-based system or fintech solution 60% of Africa. So the Muslim population is worthless. There are no need. I mean, all the way from Africa, from Algiers to Nigeria, we just wrap them off. no Islamic solution for them. So all the fintech solutions that you see are based on the riba system, interest-based system, which doesn't appeal and caters to the African Muslim, let alone the farmer. A lot of Muslim farmers are coming to the people and say, I cannot borrow through even at an interest because this is not, it's against my religion. And I talked to some BC back then. They were telling me, oh, we failed to execute and na. I told them, you build them. A riba interest-based system, fintech, to an African Muslim nation. Are you kidding me? And you say, oh, we fell? Again, not understanding with whom they are dealing. You see? And I can, this is something that is open. This is not something, most of the time when you see high-tech solution, they're coming. And the other interesting things that I notice in Africa, and I'm going to be blunt, whenever there's a successful African founder that's doing something very, very innovative, guess what? We give them free visa to come and settle their business in Paris. So we're not taking the ground from Africa, the resources. I mean, for me, the most important resources is a human being. So what's funny is that we're not done with you guys with taking off your energy. We are taking you people. That's simple as that. And I see not long ago a bunch of top talent from Africa building solutions from Africa that are so exciting, landing in Paris, New York, and that's it. And that bye Africa. So I hope that where the organism you're working for now will support keeping our talent, using our people, and not letting them go for anything, and try to stop this kind of talented MIT guys coming and thinking that he knows it all and he will milk the African and go away again. And that's what's happening. And I think Joseph can testify on some of those fintech solutions that came in Kenya. None of them were founders from Kenya. They launched. They knew they were a loophole. The government kind of tried to regulate things. Doesn't happen. They come, make money, and run. That's crazy. And it's happening also, unfortunately, with some of the crypto people. And that's why we try to bring value crypto solutions that are kind of in line with our sustainable vision and also our ethic and also a riba-free interest crypto network, I would say.
Yeah, so just to get back to the point of it, I think,
Yeah.
a lot of what we're
Go
doing
ahead.
right now is talking around a dystopian future for ourselves. We're talking about, these intelligent machines taking over. We're talking about, all the movies we see are dystopian, all the series we see are dystopian. We've now taken fairy tales and created them very dystopian-like. We've literally centered ourselves around a mindset that is just one where it's okay to behave in a function or in a manner where we just rip each other to pieces just for survival. And I think that fundamentally needs to change, right? So the eternal optimist in me always says that, every nanosecond of every day you have a choice. And right now you have a choice of whether to go dystopian or to actually just be a present conscious human being. And what's actually going to talk to your value system, what's going to talk to your religious beliefs, what's going to help you actually make the world a better place, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for now, whether it's for the future generations to come, right? Whether it's on this planet or another planet, right? Let's not have that discussion now. But there's all of these things to consider in terms of preservation of species. And there's a interesting thing that I started seeing happening of late, and is something I started talking a lot around, is the cost of intellect. So we're all starting to fight with each other so much right now that the importance of intellect and the importance to actually stand out becomes so important. And that's how we're going to be newly benchmarked. It's no longer what are your morals, what are your values, what are your ethics. It's no longer how much of money you have in the bank account. It's literally going to be around how do we compare intellectually with one another. And that becomes really important. Another factor for us is there's many facets to that, but maybe we'll delve into what are those for an economic sort of stance maybe in our next meet. But let me not take up too much more of your time. I've actually just really enjoyed our conversation together. It's been super phenomenal, and I feel like we could literally sit and talk for the entire day.
We will one day. Let us wrap this up. So thank you so much for coming and talking to us today, Lavina. Murad, did you want to say
Yeah,
something?
no, thank you. I think, look, we just scratched the surface of the beautiful percentage of, opportunity and potential of Africa. I'm a true believer of African nation, and I'm being myself Algerian. And I think having the latest news on the BRICS welcoming two of the most growing fastest country in Africa, like Ethiopia and Egypt, being on board will kind of bring a lot of potential for the rest of us in Africa to see the example of having a counterbalance. I would say, finally, it's not only a one-sided world where the G7 dictate everything for the African nation. Having a BRICS coming on board might uplift the African nation. But what is very important for us as African, I think, is to become our independent nation and not needing either the West or the East in order for us to grow and build our own journey. So looking forward for innovation. I think through innovation, technology, adoption, the big potential of the young generation building the future would be something that they will have to deal with us eventually. Thank you so much, and it was great having you, and looking forward for the next talk. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.